everybody. You're listening to and watching the Comic Book Bears podcast. I'm Bill Zanowitz.
I'm Bryan Pittard.
And I'm Steve Morey.
And we are your hairy, heavy homos that talk about comics, but you don't have to be a hairy, heavy homo to listen in or to stream in with us at this function. And we are here to talk about comic books. And I don't know, guys, I don't see any substantial news items that came across the wire this week. Nothing. It was a slow week, I guess.
Yeah. Which can be a good thing. It can be a good thing.
Right. Slow news days are not bad, but I think there was one story, and it might be related to something we're talking about with Empire.
Oh, okay. Well, Bryan, since you brought up, do you want to cover that?
Yeah, I haven't read the issue, so I'll just put that out there. Steve, have you read it yet?
I have not been reading Empire. I know it's, especially because it's weekly.
Yeah. Oof. Caleb's been reading it, and he's not with us tonight. So, yeah.
And we sadly missed.
More, yeah.
It's better he talks about it because those are probably two of his favorite characters.
Yeah.
Right. So, but just putting it out there so we all know that it's a thing, and if you're interested now, you may not have been before. I certainly was not that interested in Empire previously, and now I'm like, all right. There is a wedding of two very well-loved superhero characters that are gay. Both gay. And this is different from the North Star wedding because that was one superhero and one not superhero. So that's the distinction everybody is making. This is more important, I guess, because it's Marvel's first superhero gay power couple. That's what they're saying. And of course, if you don't even need really to read between the lines. I think everybody who knows anything about what's going on right now knows that it's Hulkling and
Wiccan.
What's his name?
Wiccan. Yeah.
How can I forget Wiccan? My dear friend Joshua Yale from IGN, formerly Flame On's The Question. He dressed up as Wiccan for MegaCon one year, and I still have our picture together, and it's a delight. I love that. I love him and I miss him, but that picture is. I'll have to reshare that. I think on his Twitter sometime.
Hey, we were just talking about you. I remember. I remember listening to Flame On when he was still the unnamed Question. That was fun. Thing. Yeah.
The funny thing about that, and I hope he doesn't mind me telling his business because I know we talked about this at a comics panel at San Diego in 2017. How we both had military career, we were both in military contracting companies, and I was out. I was like, no, there's not even a possibility. I've done enough of the other, and he was still pretty closeted, although not like closeted. Just didn't talk about it at work. But he really was concerned. He's like, I don't want to have my identity out there, over the internet as that. He wouldn't want to affect his career. So, I mean, it was a legitimate decision. But
yeah.
So, yeah, I think that's the big news. Everything else is pretty quiet, thank God.
Yeah.
I mean, at least in the comics world, right?
Definitely.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, not
in the comics-related world, though, What?
Oh, no, I was just going to say, not so much quiet around my house, just as an FYI, if you do hear some rumbling, we are having severe thunderstorms.
We had them earlier.
Yeah. It's been bad.
Yeah, I have to say, New Jersey has been really bad with the power outages, but we usually do okay because we're on the same grid as a hospital and the police station. So when there's repairs, we get... I think I talked about this. I'm not sure it was on the show.
Well, last week, with the hurricane.
Yeah, that could have been. I'm not sure. Whatever. Anyway, who cares? We are in a period where we're getting some of the abbreviated season endings, and we had Doom Patrol today, bro.
Yeah.
And next week we have Stargirl and Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. with their series finale.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe next week we can dedicate a little bit of time.
Definitely. I definitely want to talk about Doom Patrol. Not so much because it was abbreviated. There were some great things in the finale and some, unfortunate timings.
Yeah.
But Stargirl for sure. I've been loving it. I know, Bill, you've been loving it. And I'm excited to see how they're going to end this season. So this inaugural season.
Yeah. And with Doom Patrol, I can't imagine they're going to leave us with so many threads hanging. I can't imagine they're going to bow out. And that's not a spoiler. That's just talking about a season finale. So we'll talk about that next week.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because now we're in the, by the way, dead zone of TV. There's not a lot that's coming up that's new. Except for today.
Well,
there was Star Trek. Lower Deck did come out today. So.
Oh, yeah. I forgot about that because I got an advanced screener.
Is it good?
Of the episode. No.
That's what I heard.
It was like okay. It wasn't the level of sharpness. No. If you were expecting like a Harley Quinn, you weren't going to get it.
No, what it's like it's in the very much a style of Rick and Morty, but not as absurd, and the animation's cleaner.
Mm-hmm.
But it's the kind of show where you almost expect, a Rick or a Morty or a Summer or a Jerry to just show up in a background scene.
Yeah,
because it's even the style of animation is very similar. The pupils aren't like squiggles or anything, but the style, the animation, the kind of jokey timing is very very much inspired by Rick and Morty. But of course, it's Star Trek. They have to do certain things. It's not too wild. Still.
Sorry, that was bothering me.
But this was great. This was one of my favorite parts from it. It's like, don't you live long and prosper me as you walk out of this room, young lady. That was good. It's like, whatever, Mom.
I mean, I might as well watch it. Is this on CBS? CBS All Access?
All Access, yeah. Okay. And I read an article today that with all these entertainment companies getting hit with some huge losses, Disney apparently is going to have a $3 billion loss. CBS Viacom actually did much better than was anticipated. Between the streaming successes on CBS All Access and particularly Pluto.
Mm-hmm. So and even Disney with their loss, where they did see a huge growth was in Disney Plus subscribers. They had 60.5 million so far, and it's a relatively young.
It's not comics related, but can we just for a moment discuss Mulan?
We got to,
yeah. Only that I am incredulous that it is $30, which is for a household, because basically you can have a house party. Not that you should.
Yes.
But if you have more than one person in your house.
Don't die because of Mulan.
But I mean, Mulan. $30, and that's on top of having the subscription. That's outrageous to me. But
if you think about it, if they were able to release it in a movie theater, where the audiences that are going to go see Mulan are a lot of families. And for a family of 4 to go see a movie, even during the day, even if they're not getting popcorn, whatever, they're spending at least $20, $30 on tickets. Mm-hmm. And when Scoob was released, because Warner Brothers did the same thing with Scoob.
Oh, really?
On the streaming platforms. They didn't make it exclusive, though. That was I think the difference. The difference here is Mulan.
No, it was available.
Yeah, it was available on like Vudu, other platforms as like special premieres, kind of like the Trolls World Tour. But it was a $20 rental. No, wasn't available for sale. At least right away.
It wasn't available for sale fairly quickly, though.
Yeah, it took a couple weeks.
It was within a month. I think you could buy it for. Yeah,
but with Mulan, I mean, they're going with that next level price point from $20, which was what they were charging for a lot of the theater at home releases, to $30. We'll see if it works. They're just doing it as an experiment. They've come out and said that they're not doing that with Black Widow or New Mutants or anything else like that. But
they can't piss off their theatrical distribution system too much. It's like the direct market equivalent for comics, right?
Yeah.
You can't piss them off completely or you were going to lose a lot of revenue. So it's like that whole fine line they're balancing. Jim, our buddy, Figueredo, I think I said his name right, had a question. Oh, he's answering our question. Sorry. He's saying, I'm still hoping they stop trying to launch New Mutants at movie theaters and launch it to some streaming service.
Okay, I agree. I agree, but it is pretty apparent from some of the comments that Disney has provided and some of the comments that the directors provided that they are prevented from it going directly to streaming. Now, when they say a theatrical release, it may be a week in a drive-in, and then that frees it up.
Mm-hmm.
But there are certain legal restrictions, I believe, in my heart of hearts, that if they were not enjoined from doing that, we would have had that on Disney Plus by May.
It would have been at launch.
Yeah.
For this stuff, New Mutants especially, it's been delayed so many times. The original speculation early last year, was that it would just be released on one of the streaming services at that point, and that was pre-COVID, before any of that. So, the fact that they've had to hold out for theatrical release, just goes to see how tight and how restrictive a lot of these agreements tend to be. However, there has been some cracks in that wall. Speaking of, how quickly something goes from rental only or theater only to digital release for purchase. They're actually, I think Paramount and AMC and a couple other studios have actually agreed on a much shorter window now.
Yeah.
For a lot of their releases, where instead of being the 3-month window that goes between, release in the theater and then release for home video, whether it's digital or Blu-ray, it's now going to be 6 weeks, which is a huge. It also
seems to me, and I don't know if you guys feel this way, but it seems to me that the audience that goes to see films theatrically is not exactly congruous to the audience that sees it either through video on demand or streaming.
Oh, very true. Yeah.
So I don't, with this whole pandemic, putting the kibosh on one of those outlets, I don't see that being too much of an issue once we hopefully do resume normality here.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely when I feel when theaters are open again, but also when I feel comfortable going.
Yeah.
When I go see a movie, I see it within its first week of release, 2 weeks max usually. So like if I can't see it the weekend it comes out, then usually within the next week or two. So, and I think a lot of people are like that. That's one of the arguments that they used to justify the much shorter window, because theaters are making all their money in the first couple of weeks. They're not making their money by week 6, or if they are
making money by week 6, God bless that film.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. That's an anomaly. That is not the norm anymore.
No. And so, making studios being able to just then at that point go and make their, their $20 sale per digital.
See, I go like that because I only see matinees pretty much.
I had the AMC whatever the A-list. So 3 movies a week for $20.
I have the wimpy stubs. I have the one
the free stubs. Not that it matters anymore, because obviously since February, since the beginning of March, I haven't been able to use it. Yeah. Last movie I saw, I think, was either it was Emma.
I think the last time I actually spent bank on a movie theater ticket was probably the Superman 40th anniversary. Here, can I get back to comments? When they, one of the Fathom events.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That may be the last time that I spent, serious buck on a film. Oh, all right. Comic books. That's in the title. So let's go over to Steve. Steve, tell us about something you're reading in the.
Well, what I've been reading, this was a release. This again was delayed, I think just a couple of months, but it was released just very recently from our friends over at Scout Comics. Which, if you're a fan of Stabby Bunny, that's where Stabby Bunny is at home. And this one is called "It Eats What Feeds It," which is it's a title written by Max Hoven and Aaron Crow, not the baseball player Aaron Crow. And art is by Gabriel, and I'm going to massacre his last name, Yumazark. Which I thought was also incredibly intriguing, and there was actually one of the reasons that I went and picked this book up, or I had ordered this book. just because the art is gorgeous, and it reminds me very much of, if anybody remembers, 25 years ago or about 25 years ago, Macross, Robotech in the US, Macross everybody else, Macross Plus was released, and the character designs had a very unique, were a very unique style, kind of like almost a little bit like Peter Chung's Eon Flux, a little bit more streamlined, thinner characters, much more angular faces, architectural hair. Just different, and
Sexier.
yeah, in a way, not necessarily more realistic, but definitely a very unique look. And Yumazark's art is similar in that style. Just like the facial features, the bodies, much longer, leaner, thinner characters. Lots of shadows in this book. There's a lot of black on the page, block colors, and some interesting, sketchy, type of artwork in there. And that's what drew me to it originally, because I didn't know anything about the story. So of course the story itself, just to set it up, is a sort of an unemployed, kind of loserish dude, young guy, is reading the classifieds and decides to answer an ad for somebody to basically, come and be a groundskeeper, housekeeper, just jack of all trades help for a poor lonely person. And when he gets to the house, it's this massive, plantation era mansion out in the middle of nowhere. Looks really creepy, of course. Looks haunted, of course. And his car doesn't start. So he's stuck there, and you might as well go in. And of course, who he meets there is this very gorgeous, pale figure, beautiful woman that immediately falls, just bug-eyed for, who basically is like, hey, this is my house. I just need somebody to help me out. I'm very, I'm sick. I'm very tired these days. I just need help in just keeping this place up. And she gives him a quick tour of the house, filled with very interesting rooms that he's not allowed to go into, some interesting sights, some very bloody kitchen, lots of things that for everybody who's ever watched a horror movie are red flags. But it's too good to be true. He has to accept. He gets his own little guest house. It's wonderful. It's beautiful. Obviously, something's going to go wrong. And it's a very short first issue. It moves very quickly. There's not a lot of dialogue that's really necessary because the art is so expressive. But it sets you up in a way that, and if Caleb were here, a Junji Ito story would set you up, where that there's going to be body horror involved just by glimpses and shaded things and, a sight through a window that doesn't look human but kind of looks human, things like that are very much implied in this first issue. And so I'm looking forward to it. I believe it's a 4-issue miniseries. From Scout Comics. So pick it up if you're interested in sort of like an North American take on horror, but in an interesting, almost Japanese style of art.
In regards to Scout Comics, the Stabbity world aside, Stabbity Bunny, Shadow Play, that stuff aside.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Have there been any other books that you've read? Because I've tried a few and I never stuck with them. I thought The Mall would be like right up my street, and I bailed on that early. So I was just wondering if there were other Scout books that you were.
I haven't actually read any. Solar Flare, I think maybe it was like one of the other ones, but I haven't really read too many other books that Scout puts out, and they do put out a good variety. They have an interesting back catalog. It's not huge. They don't have a huge comics catalog essentially, but they do have some interesting ones. But I think it's a little bit harder because like a lot of small press publishers, their books might not get on the shelf at every store. So they're kind of one of those one of those publishers that either has some key stores that always buy anything that they put out. And so you can always find them at those particular key stores, usually much larger stores, regional, maybe more regional books or LCSs. But a lot of smaller stores like my LCS doesn't tend to carry a lot of scout books unless somebody comes in and specifically asks for it. So,
and they do maintain and they do maintain a pretty good presence at cons.
They do. I think, and that's one of the great things is that they do, make their presence known, and they've got some good salespeople who are usually creators that also work for them. So,
okay, wink. Yeah. Okay, so thank you for that, Steve. Before we move over to Bryan with what he's going to talk about, why don't we all show our shirts? Steve, you went first talking about comics, so let's put you in that slide.
I think most people have seen this one before. I think this might be a repeat from a couple months ago. My narwhal. It is a narwhal. He's got his little horn, and he's very unhappy. So
Oh.
And Bryan, how about you?
I've got my Sufjan Stevens shirt that I got when I saw him in concert in Orlando. Oh gosh, 4 years ago. One of my favorites. Cool. Love this shirt.
It's awesome. I love the design.
Well, I'm the resident DC guy, so of course I'm wearing a Marvel shirt. Marvel.
Why not?
There's Hulk, there's Iron Man. You go up here a little bit. There's Cap and Mandarin fighting them, and Thor. So
classic
Marvel shirt. Yeah, it's all 60s and 70s imagery kind of mashed together.
Nice. Your Marvel shirt reminds me. It's a classic. Like, do we know what the cover's from? Is it like an Avengers?
No,
cover,
it's all from a bunch of different sources because there's a John Romita Thor. There's a Don Heck Mandarin. Cap is by Kirby. I would say probably George Tuska, Iron Man, and Herb Trimpe Hulk. So they're all from different sources.
It's a jam piece, man. That's pretty awesome.
Yeah, it's a jam piece.
I was reminded Marvel-wise that there's there's one announcement or one big thing coming. And there's another thing that's like being teased. And because, again, we're gonna be blowing through this episode quickly without Caleb here. Marvel has put a presence in the game Fortnite, most recently in its adding Captain America as a playable skin. But there are things coming out now that are suggesting that we're going to get Thor and Hulk in addition. So even though this season in Fortnite is dedicated to Aquaman, we are seeing these hints and things. Anyway, so that's one Marvel pop culture reference. Then the other one is, and this is actually tangible for pre-order, I think.
Yep.
Square Enix is putting out an Avengers MMO.
Yeah.
And I just watched the trailer for that today.
It is an MMO. I'd say it's
or is it the other one?
MO. It's an MO. Because it's not as massively. You can actually play with. I think it's.
That's right. It's
a lot of about
limited.
4.
There's another term for that, and I can't remember what it is. The kids, it's
online
like League of Legends.
Online co-op, basically.
Yeah.
But you don't have to. It can be a single player game. You just basically pick your own. Which Avenger you want to be, and then the other 3 are AI. But it is up to 4 players. And they go through missions and squads. And it sounds like from the beta that there's a lot of good stuff in there, but there's also some stuff that, not too sure yet. Might need to be cooked a little bit more. It comes out in a month, so hopefully...
I know, I'm like...
And of course, everybody's all mad that Spider-Man is PlayStation exclusive. It's like, who cares? Just...
We got 2 comments I want to share real quick.
Sure.
Jim, because he likes the narwhal shirt.
Nah.
And then Brad giving some love to Bill there.
Well, I mean, whenever does he not?
Well, I also have to say this. In my experience, I've never known Brad to be wrong.
Yes, it's very true. Brad is always right.
I like how that works out.
I do have a sort of asshole question about Fortnite.
Yes.
As somebody who's not a gamer, but I noticed the presence in big box retail. Does Fortnite stuff go automatically to sell-through pricing? because
I
it's
don't
like
know.
you always see like Fortnite stuff. It's like packed in clearances.
So it's funny because I saw that before I started playing it. I only started playing it in the last year because my boyfriend Brandon got me into it, and we basically play every night. So like every day for like let's say about an hour a day we play, and have for a while now. So I don't know as much about the merch, but I remember seeing it, and I have a feeling you're right because they put out so much digital content. That's how the game works. It's free to play.
Yeah.
And then you can buy these skins and emotes and all this other crap and figurines. And so I wouldn't be surprised if it was some kind of
just because there's so much rapid movement in the game.
Oh yeah. Well, seasons, the way the seasons work is it's basically like a fixed number of months that you have this
well that
set
makes
of content.
sense then. Yeah.
And then it rotates and changes.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense then. All right, Bryan, you kind of have the mic anyway, so why don't you tell us about something you're reading that you're digging?
I have been struggling this week to figure out what I want to talk about. And that's a good thing because usually it's like, oh, this is really all I want to talk about because it's all I read. You know, my comics input is limited these days. But I decided to get caught up on Marvel X books because it's been a few weeks. And I'm just honorable mentions. I love the one-shot, oh gosh, what do they call those? The
giant-sized ones?
The giant-sized. I read the Magneto one today and the Phantom X one today.
Yeah.
Both Hickman with different artists, very good. Really solid. And I also read the Deadpool tie-in to Krakoa and stuff, and it was ridiculous. It was ridiculous, as you'd expect. But I did enjoy that too. So honorable mention there as well. But there were two books. I'm going to say two books that were outstanding. And two books that one I've been reading. It's only got a second issue. But the other one I had not read before because I believe it was the first issue. X Factor, #1. Yeah, good choice.
Excellent book. At least mine.
To my knowledge, I had never read Lee Williams' stuff. And I went back and looked into some of her background, and I love her to death already. She's phenomenal from what I can observe through social media. And this issue, so X-Men Corner, right? So Bill, bear with us, right?
No.
You're reading it.
Well, there's been a big gap between 9 and 10, right? Correct me if I'm wrong in terms of
regular X-Men.
The regular X-Men, yeah. The only books I'm getting regularly, and I'm behind on the reading, are X-Men and New Mutants.
All right.
Yeah, but I am getting the giant-sized ones. The Phantom X is in my next box.
Good. Add X Factor, and here's why. We had been told that other books would really explore the inner workings of Krakoa, and I would say on average they're not so much. They go off in their own directions, and that's fine, but they don't really get back to the core ideas. X-Men does. The one-shots, not so much, because they're kind of branching off and doing other things. But X Factor #1, 100% ties into Krakoa. You get this whole thing organically spinning out of the potential death of Aurora, who is...
from Alpha Flight?
Yeah.
North
Star's sister.
Twin sister,
okay.
Yeah.
And it's organic because the reason is my sister is dead. I know this. North Star saying this. I know this because I can feel it. Well, we need proof. We can't just reincarnate another mutant from a backup if we don't have proof. We need to see a body, right? We need to know so we don't have multiples going on. Totally valid. So then he stumbles into what has basically become of X Factor, which is really just Polaris, who says we can put a team together, we can figure this out. And they put a team together and they figure it out. And what's amazing is that the relationships are very solidly rooted in history of the X-Men. So you don't have to know it, but it helps to know. The characterizations I found were all very true to the characters from what I know of the X-Men, and I've read it for a while. And the way they use their powers all fits together as tightly as I've ever seen in a team book in a long time. So all of that, it's procedural to some extent. So that kind of formula works for some people. Some people hate it. I don't mind it. And it again ties back into the Five and the Quiet Council and the whole idea that they need a process. They need bureaucracy. Something you'd think I'd never say, being from a lot of bureaucracy in my adult life. They need it. They absolutely need it to manage this resurrection process and to work the backlog and also figure things out going forward. So overall, fun issue. It's not bogged down. It really does feel pretty light. We got 2 bi characters in there. We got Dakin and Prodigy. So LGBT representation in addition to North Star, right? Mm-hmm. I don't know if I missed another character who's out in that lineup, but yeah, it's great. It's really fun, and the art, David I can't say his name, Baldeon. I don't know. His art's fantastic, and he's been around for a while, but you may or may not have ever seen his work. Very dynamic, a little more on the cartoony side, but fun, very light. It works even when it needs to be a little more serious. So I can't recommend this issue enough. Steve, you read it too, right?
Oh yeah, and actually, what you're saying about Baldeon's art, like it fits well with the last incarnation of X Factor, which was it was Peter David, and on art it was I
don't remember, but I remember really enjoying it.
No, Giandomenico, I think.
Oh, is it him?
I'm getting the name all messed up, but the art was also kind of like interesting and kind of almost cartoony, stylized, but also really good with action, and capturing sort of like the look of the characters in a very unique way. But I totally agree. This has been I've been missing X Factor, like real X Factor, and this is a combination of X Factor teams of the past mixed with the X Factor investigations idea from several years back, but brought into the Krakoa reality, and I love it. I love it. I also love Warwolf, baby, awesome baby.
Yeah, and it pulls in stuff from Excalibur too, which is really nice. What were you going to say, Bill?
I was going to say, is Dakin a good guy?
Yes.
In this incarnation? Good-ish. Okay.
Yeah. He even addresses it. He says, like, I'm good now.
Because about the only Dakin stuff I've read was the very early Dark Wolverine stuff. That's about it.
Well, and then also recently with
I really don't know what his character path has been since then.
Well, Iceman, it's been back and forth. Like Iceman, he was bad guy, and then there was another.
Yeah, Iceman. Yeah, that's right.
Where he was kind of good. I think it was X-23, or All New Wolverine, where he showed up as well and was kind of like helpful.
Mm-hmm. Well, if anybody wants to send me a digital code, I'll take it.
Wink.
I've winked a lot on this episode.
I got you.
Oh my gosh.
I got you.
The other book I want to talk about real quick, and it's not an honorable mention, but I'll put it right up there with it, is Cable #2. I talked about Cable #1 a few months ago. It's been a while. But what is so nice about this is, and I love Cable. I love adult Cable. I love burly, old man Cable. I love that characterization. But what they're getting to do with this, which is really nice, is give young Nate Gray, but Cable Nate Gray, not the other Nate Gray, a fun sort of post-teenage, like young adult period in the current continuity with his dad being around, which I love. It's the Cyclops, Jean Grey, Nate Summers. Nate Summers, not Nate Gray. Well, wait, no, Nate Gray. God, it's been a while. Oh my gosh. Okay, yeah. But you know what I'm talking about, Nathan Ascani's son. Like, they're getting to show a little bit of that. In this issue, it's a little separate, but the last one they got to play with that a little bit. They're also getting to have Cable. I'm not going to say he's getting laid, but he's probably getting laid. Like, he's getting to go on dates with the Cuckoos, which is hilarious. Because then you get Emma coming in and being like, Scott, we need to talk about your son. There's a whole joke there.
Dating like the Cuckoos, plural?
All of them.
He's all right, and they know this. That's what's funny.
Good for him.
he's like, you guys don't like hang around and like psychically link when we're hanging out. And Esme, she's like, no, we don't do that. And then immediately a cut to them totally doing that. Yeah. But there's a joke about Esme specifically, and Emma comes in and she's like, Nate's gonna break their hearts. Don't let this happen. They're all very sensitive. But Esme, he really needs to break her heart to teach her a lesson. It's a great. This is one of the funniest issues I've read of X-Men in a long time. And it's serious because there's a baby who's been kidnapped, but there's this stuff going on in Philadelphia with the cops that's kind of ridiculous and funny. These detectives that are investigating it, and they're kind of basically like telling Nate and then Scott to like back out and go have a cheesesteak and get out of our hair. There's the stuff with Emma that's funny, and then there's the Rom stuff that's coming in, which I assume in some way ties into the Ten of Swords, maybe. Because Nate's got his sword and all that crap, but like that whole thing comes into bear. It's fun, and Phil Noto, who has always done amazing work as cover artist, but has more and more gotten good at sequential art. He's killing it on this. It looks great. Like he is doing some really, really solid work. Colored by I guess he's doing the color he's doing the color. So it's just solid. It's beautiful. Yeah, you got the physical issue there. So 2 books. If you're reading X-Men by itself, which X-Men's great, this last issue with Vulcan, solid. Like Hickman's killing it. But yeah, look at that. That little pop of the white and then his hair. Mm-hmm. And the way some of the faces are a little janky, I will say. Esme and the Cuckoos, like their faces are a little weird. Like I was like,
well, he has to draw them 5 times, so.
But Bill, you got to add if you don't have Cable on there, and then they do show Old Man Cable in his whatever weird adventure he's having. They do have that drawn in a completely different style. No. I know we talked about this last time, and my memory is complete shit, but I feel like that's just Noto doing it in a very different style because it's got that same kind of painted sort of look. Mm-hmm. But anyway, great book. Solid. I just wish there was more of it. Maybe there will be now.
Maybe. Although we didn't get an Excalibur last month in July at all. It went from we had Excalibur in June and then nothing last month. And I'm hoping we get it this month.
I'm looking to see what X books I've sampled. I bought a lot of comics this year. Whoa. Digitally. I know I sampled some of the other ones, but it's not worth me looking. It does kind of tie in with the book that I want to talk about, because one thing you said, Bryan, and this was one thing that I really appreciated coming out of Hoxpox, was that you didn't need to be steeped in X-Men lore. Like whatever X-Men you had coming in, that's your X-Men. And you could go from there. Like even with what I said about Daken, you don't need to know that he had this arc, of one of the Dark Avengers and all that stuff. You just needed to know he was bad at one. I assume that's all you need to know. And was seeking revenge on his father. Basically right. That's all you need to know. And that's one thing I really appreciated about Hoxpox. Going to the other one of the big two. Over the last few months, DC has really expanded their digital first campaign. Some of this was out of necessity because of the shutdown. Material that was originally slated for the Walmart 100 pagers became digital first and still really hasn't been collected. Only the first batch of titles really has been collected at this point. And the digital first books, they seem to have taken a life beyond that. That there are clearly things that were not prepared for the 100-page initiative. And when you read those books, it's one of those things where it could be in continuity or it doesn't have to be. There's nothing that there's a place for it if you need it to be neatly filed within continuity. But if you're not worried about that, it's just a story. And this book is tied into that. It predates it a little bit, but it's tied into that. So the book that I want to talk about, and I've had this for a while, and I only read it this week, The Death of Superman: The Wake, which is written by Louise Simonson with art by Kat Staggs, and then a whole bunch of artists, including a name that I haven't seen in a long time, John Bogdanovi, who was a very prominent Superman artist in the 90s and one of the Superman crew that did the original Death of Superman. So this Death of Superman relates to the DC animated universe Death of Superman, and then the whatever the return film was. Again, that's an initiative of the original animated films that just recently ended with Justice League Dark
Side.
Yeah, which I have to get. I haven't watched the last four actually. The last four films, the three in that series and Red Sun, I still have to see them. God, wouldn't it be nice to have like 38 hours in a day? That would be really good. Just don't. So what this book does, and The Wake is kind of a misnomer because a lot of the stories take place before the goings on with Doomsday, and then it wraps up in the end with essentially the funeral for a friend in this particular universe. So as you see there, that's clearly a new 52-ish Superman. And I've really missed Louise Simonson's writing. I know a lot of people, probably latched onto her most prominently through New Mutants and X Factor, the original X Factor. When she moved to DC in the 90s, her run on Superman, which gave birth to the John Henry Iron Steel after the death and all that. Out of the writers that were on Superman, she was by far my favorite because she was the one that I think held the least contempt for his supporting cast. Maybe kind of a harsh way of putting it. But there were some other writers that seemed that I could see like in editorials, like you've got to put Perry White in. Perry White hasn't been in an issue in 12 months. You've got to put him in there. She seemed to have a really, really sweet affection for those characters, and especially Ma Pa Kent. And we do have Ma Kent here. It's nice to have a Ma Kent moment. Probably my favorite moment out of the Death of Superman was when the Kents were burying the mementos because they couldn't be public about it. The loss of their son and just the dialogue between two grieving parents. It was just on the mark. It was so good. And we have Superman here. He fights Parasite. He fights a version of the Toyman called the Toy Master. We have a Lobo, and it's actually a pretty good version of Lobo. I actually laughed a few times, and that takes a lot for any Lobo appearance for me to do that. Parasite, I think I've mentioned. Metallo. You have the other members of the Justice League, particularly when they actually do get to the funeral. And I just have to say, like, after forming last week, I needed something that was super conventional. I needed a palate cleanser. And until I get the new box in, I'm playing catch up. And this was just a really solid collection. It was originally collected digital. It was originally, I can't say collected digitally. It initially came out digitally, was collected in trade form. If you want to pick up the issues, they're only 99 cents each. And wait for Comixology sale at half off. You can get Ultra Bank for $6 digitally. So just keep that in mind. And Kat Staggs' art, she's not an artist that I would necessarily put on Superman, but she availed herself pretty well. She is a woman, right? Kat Staggs is a woman. I'm pretty sure about that. Some nice Lois moments, just a nice little Superman collection. And again, didn't have to be mired in continuity. You basically just had to see the DC the animated universe films, and just a nice supplement to them as well. And apart from the Suicide Squad, I don't think there's been any comic content that has related to the connected films. I think there was that one Suicide Squad series, and this. I think that's it in terms of comics. But as I said, I needed something super conventional, superhero-y thing after just being mired in a couple of independent things that I've read, and that did the trick. So it's the book I wanted to talk about.
That sounds like a lot of fun, and I have not watched the latest. I haven't even watched Death of Superman. Again, need more hours in the day, right?
Yeah.
But that looks really great, and I'm really interested to revisit that, having only read the original Death of Superman and then that animated movie they did at the beginning of DC Animated. And I did just look up Kat Skaggs, and I didn't realize all the work that she's done.
Yeah.
Wow. A lot of good stuff. Some with Gail Simone, Wonder Woman 77, which is another series that I, for some reason, never got around to seeing. Yeah. Oh wow. I gotta go back and dig it because I like that. Just the cover you showed looks really good. And yeah, definitely not a traditional Superman choice, but.
Yep. And I have to say with the Death of Superman, the original Death of Superman, I reread most of it about 4 years ago. Just it was one of those things. Let me just pull it off the shelf, and then 6 hours later, I'm on the third volume, and it held up really well. A lot of books from that time period, particularly the early '90s, they don't. And everybody was guilty of the imaging of comics, with splash page after splash page, and some of those early image books you can read them in 23 seconds. And I'm not lying. Go to Cyberforce #2. Whoop, you're done. And that also followed into the big two. Some Marvel kind of had the precedent with a lot of those creators, but there was a time period where the writer was secondary. I want to say, at least that was the opinion of editorial, and Superman didn't hold to that, and it was nice that we had that. So it held up well, and a variation like this book is
cool.
I mean, that's the interesting thing I think about the animated series, because there were two Death of Superman movies made.
The first is garbage. Yeah. Superman Doomsday is garbage.
Yeah. But the animated universe one, the most recent one that takes place sort of in a new 52-ish type universe, I think did a great job.
Mm-hmm.
And the Return of Superman, or Rise of the Superman.
Rise of the Superman, yeah.
Also did a great job in taking those, taking the four different characters, the Eradicator and Henry and Superboy, and putting them, sort of in a more modern context that wasn't so mired in the early 90s, especially Superboy. And I was reading comics at that time. Like these were the comics that I was buying after the Death of Superman. I actually did try to look, go back and read some of those issues, and I was like, very 90s, very early 90s, but early 90s DC. So not DC trying to be Image, but just.
Oh no, but Image had an effect.
Oh yeah,
Image definitely had an effect, and there are some books that were clearly Image oriented. There was a reboot of Manhunter, and the what was that god awful Justice League spinoff, Extreme Justice.
Extreme Justice.
Yeah, and that was kind of sad too, that these venerable institutions, this one too, were taking their cues from an upstart.
Yeah,
there's a sadness, and I don't even think the Image people would have wanted that.
To be fair, the upstart was selling millions of copies of whatever garbage they were putting out. Some of it was good. But
so was DC and Marvel too. I mean, that through line continued for a long time, certainly into Nightfall. Yeah. So I mean, you look at those numbers that those books sold. Oh my God!
I used to love DC and Marvel. Both did these the annual events. with the annuals. I love those. Those were a lot of fun. You got a lot of story for your buck. They didn't tie in with anything else.
They didn't tie into the main books.
The regular series, so you didn't have to worry about paying for all those. So you got your 4 or 5 or 8 parts in just the annuals. And
you might have a bookend series like Bloodlines 1 and 2, and then everything in between. You might have something like that. But
it was fun. It was nice. I
some
like.
of them were terrible though too.
Oh yeah,
Atlantis Attacks.
That was the Kree War, Galactic
Storm,
Operation Galactic Storm,
an Evolutionary War. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. One thing I loved about that, there was no real Avengers team, so they just made up a team.
Yeah.
For the annual, because the Avengers were kind of like on hiatus.
Because they could, and they brought in Guardians of the Galaxy, the old 30th century one.
What was the X-Men one with Ahab? What was that?
Days of I remember. I don't remember the title.
I think it was Days of Future Present. I think that's what it was called.
Maybe. They had one that was a weird one with like it
was like the Fantastic Four with the X-Men.
Yeah.
And a lot of the story hinged on Franklin Richards as a mutant.
There's that.
Yeah, it looks like it was Days of Future Present.
That's what it's called.
Simonsons again.
Yeah.
But and that's I think one of the interesting things about the early '90s is you did have a lot of iconic stuff, but it's interesting to have it retold 30 years later, in the context of a reboot or a reimagining animated film.
Yeah.
So that's kind of cool. I like that. Or it's almost like the writer, like Louise could go back and sort of say, like, what would I like to do if I had a chance to do it again, and rewrite this, or pick this out, focus on these characters, do this instead. Different pressures. Obviously, I think you probably got a lot more editorial freedom here, maybe.
I also like
Jim had a good comment real quick. Let me throw it up. Artemis in Wonder Woman was Zealot cosplaying as Wonder Woman, which I completely forgot, but you're totally right.
Yep.
Yeah, Image did shake the comics industry, obviously.
Even when you think of Azrael as Batman's first costume, that was very imagey too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then Heroes Reborn at Marvel was straight up bringing an Image to reinvent Marvel.
Yeah. Oh. Give Captain America bizarre quadratic chest.
Yeah, but that's kind of a cheap shot 25 years later. It is what it is.
Poor Rob Liefeld. He'll never get over.
Yeah, poor Rob. He'll never.
Yeah, poor Rob.
All of the joshing he's gotten over the years.
Yeah. Or, poor Rob, who's been kept afloat by Deadpool and cable royalties. Yeah.
And cameo videos. You can ask him.
Oh,
do a cameo video for.
I know somebody that would be perfect.
Oh, no.
And he'll do it. The store at my LCS, the store owner, he and another friend of his had actually gotten together and had Rob Liefeld do a happy birthday cameo for
merchandising.
Oh, what a world. Lovely.
I can't say anything. I've paid for 2 cameos before, both drag queens, but still.
Yeah. I haven't gone that route. Nobody sent me one yet.
Wink.
Just wait. Even John Oliver last week.
He always wanted us. Like, I don't care.
Steve Guttenberg. That's who we'll get.
Oh yeah, right.
Tonight
Steve Guttenberg. He's like this crazy libertarian now.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like like he doesn't want like driver's licenses. Like he wants total freedom. It's like,
hey, he was in Police Academy.
Yeah.
He knows.
Yeah, if you haven't watched John Oliver this week, it's that he features him doing cameos. Yeah,
and I have to say, I will admit this: Steve Guttenberg was a big crush of mine in my early years, because that's when I was a kid, Police Academy movies were big. You had he was still a star. Or at least still featured a lot in a lot of movies in the 80s, and then just kind of, things just kind of dropped off for him in the early 90s. But, I was watching stuff on video and was like, who's that furry kid?
Yeah. I always liked him, but he wasn't a crush. But I have weird.
Yeah.
Patton.
Patton Oswalt?
No, George C. Scott is Patton.
I was like, Patton's cute, but George C. Scott, Patton. That's a different.
I always went for the Silver Daddies. Always.
Yeah.
And
So
now
George...
that I'm approaching it, I'm trying to reconcile it. It's weird. Oh boy.
Now you just totally flip, and it's just like, you know.
Well, it's weird when like people call you Poppy and stuff. I'm like, dude, you are so off the mark. Yeah. Bryan, you must be getting that too with that beard.
Oh, I've been getting Poppy for over a decade now. And the first time that somebody does that, it's a weird thing. You're
weird.
Like,
yeah.
But no, I've embraced the daddy thing now for a while. So it is what it is.
I still haven't.
I'll never get there.
I still. No, you won't. You definitely
no one will
won't.
ever call me daddy. Just
yeah,
because.
you definitely won't.
I look like I'm 12, even with the beard, even with a little, you know, with a few white flecks here and there. It'll
happen, Steve.
It's
I
that
hate to break it to you.
style. See, look at that.
The dimples. That's what does it.
It's funny. There's a group of friends of mine from college, and we've been going through our stuff and sending pics. You guys may have seen, like, you know, I've been posting pics when I was like 20, 21. 19.
Yeah, they're great.
Yeah.
And I'm so glad we have that, but it's so strange. It is so strange looking at that. Because in a lot of ways, I still feel that's what I look like and what I am.
Yep.
Not this. So.
Yep. Every day I look in the mirror, I'm like, where'd my dad come from? Why is he here?
Oh, no. I look in the mirror and I'm like, well, I was always like this. I see pictures of myself in college and everything, and I don't even recognize me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Really skinny and no beard, so it was very weird.
So, Steve, you're not the only one who thought.
I'm not
Steve
the only one,
Steve.
Yeah. No.
And of course, you know, looking back, and there was a skit, some online, it was like College Humor or something years ago, did a skit about 80s movies and their sex shenanigans, like all those little sex comedies.
Oh, yeah.
Basically, we're just committing sexual assault after sexual assault after sexual assault.
There's a supercut. There's a Think Piece supercut video that shows Revenge of the Nerds and talks about how absolutely they committed date rape. Everything
that they did.
It's bad. No, it's bad. You're like, oh.
Yeah, this is terrible. But same thing in Police Academy. Like, Police Academy had those moments constantly. And there's a lot of gay panic stuff constantly in Police Academy movies. But you know what? I had a huge crush on Steve Gutenberg, and
okay, so we've been hearing who Steve crushes on. Bryan, who are your crushes?
Oh Lord, I don't even know.
God, that was a deer in the headlights. Look.
Well, it's funny because I think back to like that era, and I don't think it was that I wasn't sexual. I just don't think I knew what I wanted. Does that make sense? So like the earliest crush I can think of is Gillian Anderson from X-Files. Like I totally love.
That's kind of like me. Like my earliest crush was Kristen McNichol.
Yeah.
Like
so
like far and away, I would have like slayed dragons for her.
Yeah, no, exactly. So for a long time, I didn't have male crushes. I'm trying to think now who, you know, I will say early, like in that like formative, like, you know, I'm actually becoming a gay adult man era. I think I liked like stupid like Czechoslovakian guys like Johan and Lucas, right? So I totally
like what porn was available, basically.
Well, you know, that's the thing. So it was never just this person was attractive. Like I didn't think that way, and it sounds ridiculous to say that, but I didn't. It was when you put it in a sexual context that I was like, oh yeah, that does it for me. And then over time, I morphed from that sort of young, twinkie, whatever, hairless creature thing to my first boyfriend, who was a little thicker, hairier, whatever, and kind of like progressed through into what I would be attracted to more now, which is hairier and a little thicker and all that. But like, crushes, gosh, it's hard because I just didn't like when I'm not in that mode. I don't think like, oh, they're hot. You know, it's really weird with me.
Yeah.
Oh, there was so little out there that I really enjoyed, but I was also, in early high school, that was sort of like the start of the internet era with AOL. I actually was on Prodigy in like 1988, 89, but no visuals. Like, you didn't have visual stuff there. But once AOL hit the scene and you could download a picture in like an hour.
It's so true.
Yeah, like you could actually get pictures of really hot. For me, guys.
The first picture of a naked man that I ever saw, I got off AOL. I went in one of these M4M chat rooms. I had just got my gateway computer, and I got on the internet through AOL because, of course, even then they came with a disc, right?
Yeah.
And this guy sends me a picture. I went away to dinner with my folks, and it had started downloading, the zigzag thing. I come back. And it's this black and white picture of this dude, and he had a nice penis. And I didn't know better. I didn't ask for a nude. This was unsolicited nudes. Also problematic. I was in high school.
Yeah.
This person was probably an adult, like probably not my age, because that was just the way it was then. And I was like, all right, that's fun. I do that again,
Yeah.
So it's just weird how that era was in terms of graphics and.
It took so long. It was like, and I'm sure it was very similar to kids growing up in the 60s and 70s hoarding, skin mags. Like, I found this thing. It's a treasure. Finding sexy photos on AOL, and I know we're totally going off comics here, but finding sexy photos on AOL, my first porn crush, like being able to see like a naked dude who was hot, was Steve Kelso. And if you remember Steve Kelso back in like the 80s and the 90s, hot, like muscular, hairy, total bear, always like with scruff. And then like from him, it was like Tom Cat with 2 T's, who would alternate between like being completely shaved and waxed to being like a total like fluff ball. But this is again based on whatever kind of pictures I could find, which wasn't very frequently. But I was in bear forums and stuff like when I was 14, 15. So obviously very prevalent.
I just remember. Do you remember when you had like the rings where you were part of it was a website that was part of a ring and you would click on and God, you just like get sucked into that for hours.
Yeah. So I was on a queer. Well, it wasn't called queer because they used gay webcam ring for years. And what's funny about this is the webcams that were on, like it wasn't like even today where people do whatever. It was just snapshots. Like you would have like these camera images up at their desk and you would have like nobody there for hours.
Yeah.
And so you'd have this static view of just whatever. And then you'd show up, a few hours later and there'd be somebody there doing their thing on the computer usually because it was in someone's office. And I was in one of these webcam rings for years. I met so many cool people through the ring, both like were in the ring and people who were messaging us on whatever, I don't remember what it was at the time. But like there was never anything on my camera that was that exciting except for, me or my then boyfriend sitting there on the computer. And the one time it almost got spicy was because that's obviously what happened, right? Yeah. The one time it almost got spicy was I was at my mom's house of all places, and we had our webcam set up, and I was on her computer. I don't know why, but you make choices, right? And I was like, so do you want to do this on the webcam? And he was like, he had just met my mom. Like, it was very recent. And he's like, no, this is insane. Why would we do this? So I think I think I still have this picture. I got to find it. He took a picture of his like stomach. Like he's just like no head, nothing below the waist. And some comment, because you could put like a little status thing about we would post more, but ... Anyway, so like that was that era, and I loved it. It was so much more fun and free than I think even today with OnlyFans, Twitter, Tumblr, all of these sites.
Free because the price of admission you already paid by signing up for AOL.
Exactly.
So everybody had to pay like for the few hours that they had. Like you were doling it out like an old phone card. And if you didn't have multiple lines in your house, you would always have somebody picking up the other line going, "Get off the computer."
That happened too.
And do you remember like your first downloading experience too?
Yeah.
I remember my first one was the record label Sub Pop. When they had their site first up, they put, I want to say like about like 8 or 9 tracks up for free download. And that would take like 9 hours for one song.
Oh, and it wasn't even great. It wasn't a great version of the audio either. But that was the thing. Like I downloaded tons of Sailor Moon pictures. Like there were very few websites that you could find because obviously websites were a weird thing. Like people didn't have them. Like you went through AOL, you had your chat rooms, you had your whatever. But this was like the early days when Cloudfire or something with
LimeWire.
Not LimeWire, not yet. That was much later.
Before even okay.
First. And that wasn't until I was in college, was Napster. And that was all just MP3s. But we would sit there, my roommate and I, at other ends of our apartments. I'd be downloading like every song I could find. And we would just watch the blue bars like zip across because we were so excited about that. But yeah, early days, it was just finding pictures of Sailor Moon that I could print out. It would take forever to download things. And of course, the dirty pictures of Steve Kelso, which I then discreetly put onto a 3.5-inch diskette and put a B in the corner for bears. And
I remember I had one disc that just said Pix. Pix. Oh,
the 90s.
Well, we're coming on the end of the show, and when we wrap up an episode of the Comic Book Bears Up, we do so with a segment we call the Wolves of the Week segment, which is where we signify something. Doesn't necessarily have to be a comic book. It can be a film or a charitable initiative or a TV program, anything under the sun that we think you, fair listener or viewer, may be interested in sampling. I'll start first with Steve. Steve, tell us your Wolf of the Week.
Well, my Wolf of the Week actually is a trailer that came out that reminds me or is telling me of an upcoming show that I'm really excited about. So yes, TV related. But that's all we have right now because we can't go to the movies. Raised by Wolves, Ridley Scott's new sci-fi epic series. This looked, from the teaser trailer, gorgeous. Really weird, and of course shockingly violent in certain glimpses that we see. So I'm thinking this is actually perfect Ridley Scott return to form. I'm hoping that the trailer wasn't just the best parts of the series, that the entire series is going to be a good mix of stuff, a good Ridley Scott well done sci-fi, because it's been a while since I've seen one of those. But it just looks exciting. There's most of the cast I'm not too familiar with, Travis Fimmel, Amanda Collin, Abubakar Salim. Some of these are, people you may have seen in other shows and other movies and stuff. Not too familiar with their massive body of work, but, the cast looks very cool. The design looks amazing. It is going to be airing on HBO Max. Starting, I believe, the first week in September. I think it's the weekend of U.S. Labor Day. It's going to be coming out, but I'm super excited to see it. It looks amazing, looks crazy. I think it's actually also all going to be released at once. But if not, because I know that some of the streaming services are doing that now to pay, to spread out their releases. It's definitely going to be a pretty good maxi series. I think right now it's just set for a single season, but it could be if it does well, it could be something that we could see for a couple of years. And when HBO comes out with their sci-fi series and fantasy series, we know that they are high production quality. So I'm looking forward to it. Hopefully you will too.
All right, moving over to Bryan. Bryan, what is your wolf of the week?
So I have something very exciting to share that I am so proud of, and I'm going to be shameless here, and I will admit that this is not I am not completely objective. However, I am mostly objective because I actually read this in beta and was very proud of the work that I read. So I don't know if you guys like queer erotica. It's not something I would read a lot. Like, honestly, it's something I occasionally would maybe see online. But back when I would be into like this kind of thing, there wasn't a lot published. Well, my boyfriend has been recently signed to a publisher to do erotica, queer erotica series, and I am going to be shameless and promote for him. This is his first book, Claiming Alexander, House of Otter, #1. This is one in a series. The cover art, like, it's a little shiny because good, thank you, Steve. It's I will tell you, it's a suggestion, but it is not at all what you necessarily need to think about. Obviously, like any cover art, for the contents, because it's even unclear once you read the story who that is. There's a whole mystery as far as if you want to do that. But I'll tell you, like, queer erotica wise, and I've read a little bit since because I'm trying to learn more about the genre. It is all over the place. There are queer erotica with dinosaurs. There is queer erotica that is like fan fiction. There's queer erotica that is like, I don't know, orcs. I mean, it runs the gamut. So don't think of queer erotica as just this one thing. But what he's done here in House of Otter, Claiming Alexander, is a little bit more on the BDSM side. So like we talked about last week, there's certainly a little bit of one perspective on that. And it's amazing. So I'm just going to say it's on Amazon. If you want to go look for it, I'd really like to know what you think, because this is something that, obviously is close to home. And yeah, so it's on Amazon, Kindle, and published like print book. If you want a hard copy, that's available. And yeah, check it out. I'm excited for the next one, which comes out in October, I believe. So,
Bryan, go ahead. Go ahead, Steve.
Copy. I'll be reading it.
Bryan, just in terms of the publisher, can you buy it directly from the publisher site?
Good question. I know they outsource through Kindle and Kubi, so I don't know if you can go directly from them because they do partner with these Amazon Kindle services, and I think Kubi is another like international service. But Four Horsemen is the publisher, so if you want to reach out, check their website. They don't have the book up yet, as far as I've seen. But yeah,
I just always like to mention that because more money goes to the publisher, more money goes to the creator. 100%. So I
absolutely
to mention that.
I don't know the percentages for Kubi versus Amazon. I know Amazon's percentages because I spent a lot of time researching because of this, with Brandon. So it's like, look it up, find out. But really at this point, whatever works for you. If you've got a Kindle, go with Kindle. If you really like hard copies, it's $10. It's a I forgot the format, but it's a smaller novel. It's not what you would consider like that normal thickness of word count or pages or whatever.
Yeah.
But it's a series, and so again, if you're interested in it, there will be more in this current series. So.
Cool. All right, I'm going to start my Wolf of the Week with a question. Steve, what is your favorite breakfast cereal?
It is a toss-up between Golden Grahams and Reese's Peanut Butter Puffs.
Okay. And Bryan, what about you? What is your favorite breakfast cereal?
I've not had breakfast cereal in probably over a decade, but back in the day, Apple Jacks and what was Toucan Sam? Fruit Loops.
Fruit Loops.
Those are my two favorites.
You have to understand, I hate sugared cereals. I can eat Frosted Flakes in a pinch, but that's about it. Even Raisin Bran is kind of pushing it. So I'm cut from the Corn Flake, Special K, Probably my favorite cereal is Rice Chex. That's probably my favorite. Rice Krispies is another one that I like, and here's a box of Rice Krispies.
Wow.
Family size. And what does it say up there? It says 1 box equals 1 free book. So I just want everybody to know that there's a feeding reading initiative that's being put through Kellogg's and in partnership with Penguin Random House, where for every book that you get, for every cereal you get, and there's some other things like Pop-Tarts and Eggos, you can get a free book, and it's a free physical book. When they're talking about the feeding reading, it's not just feeding the reading aspect that children through tweens reading. There's also donations going to hunger banks and things like that. So all around, it's a good thing. So since I buy cereal, I got some books. So I probably will eventually pass these on because I'm not the target audience. But I was always wondering what these books were like, and I got and these are very familiar names to comic book people. I got I Am Neil Armstrong, written by Brad Meltzer and drawn by
Chris Eliopoulos.
Okay. The same team does this. I have I Am Madame Curie, and kind of on a Madame Curie jag because of this really good play we saw in the fall with Kate Mulgrew as Madame Curie. Oh, wow. And I Am Martin Luther King. So it's a continuing series called Ordinary People Change the World. And I really wanted to see what this was like. And it's a graphic novel. You know, it's graphic fiction. So, I probably, as I said, will pass these on to some deserving person of the more appropriate age. But another great thing you can do if you do this is you can gift them to schools or to libraries, and you can also gift them to other people naturally. So I just thought there was, for the amount of time it took for me to take a picture of a receipt, I just think this was something worthwhile. So that's my woof of the week, the feeding reading program from Kellogg's and Penguin Random.
That's fantastic. I remember doing that with like other things like G.I. Joes, and you would get the UPCs and you would send them in. And that whole process was always sort of magic because for the younger watcher, listener, people out there, before the internet, if you wanted to get something in the mail, you had to have a catalog. And catalogs were not easy to come by either if you were children. Not like, they were later or whatever, or now. But like you would find these offers and it would be so amazing to get a thing by just taking the UPC, clipping it out, putting it in the mail, and then magic. Yeah.
When I got my Boba Fett figure through the Kenner UPCs from the stores, it was like, I'm pretty sure I cried. I'm pretty sure I cried. That was the most magical thing that ever could happen. But getting people to read is always magic too. So
Amen.
Cool. All right, we're wrapping this one up for good now. Again, we are the Comic Book Bears podcast. You can find us on the Facebook as Comic Book Bears podcast. You can find us on the Twitter and the Tumblr and the Instagram as Comic Book Bears. Good news, we did solve our password problem with those things, so some of them actually might get updated probably soon. Again, as Bryan has said on the last episode, and as we really want to push, please subscribe to our YouTube channel so we can get the hits and get some notoriety. The numbers on Facebook are fantastic of people tuning in, even if it's for a second. But if you go to YouTube, you get the whole episode. It's a little cleaner some ways, and you can stop and start it at your pace. This kind of stuff is great when you're working, so just want to push that and make sure you put in those reviews. Same thing with iTunes. You can download us through iTunes. Please make sure you leave a review. You can also catch us through Stitcher Radio and some of the other podcatching platforms. And if you want to write to us, please do so by sending an email to comicbookbears@gmail.com. Until next time, I'm Bill Zanowitz.
I'm Bryan Pitter.
And I'm Steve Morey.
You're going to hear a woof and an explosion. We'll be back next week. Woof.